Well, hi everybody, it's another Conversations with, and I'm Dick Vaughn. Well, today we've got a very special program for you, and something that I want to start out before I introduce my guests to share a little story with you. 5th of March, I had a very, life-saving operation at Mass General Hospital. And while I was there, I was visited by these delightful young people, and they brought me this little card. And this little card is organ, eye, and tissue donors are life donors. What can you make possible? And it's a little card about donating organs. And I've kept it with me because I knew these two folks were going to join me. With me today is Robin Latoy and Bob Wood. And these folks, each one of them has had the experience of getting a transplant. And that's why they're here, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But having said that, it's something we all hear. It's something we all talk about. And my wife happens to be a donor. She's already done that. And well, she's been after me for 2 or 3 years to do it. And I never thought about it much until I was, the last thing you do before you have an operation, a serious operation, you have a bunch of papers you have to sign. Well, the last piece of paper that you sign is the one that says risk of death. And as the doctor said to me, because I had a very serious, I have a 12 or 14 inch laceration, incision. And the last thing he said to me was, he said, now listen, he says, I got to understand something. I better be perfect. He says, because otherwise you're going home in a box. But we laughed and and I said to him, by the way, hey, listen, one other thing. If we hit oil, I get 80%, you only get 20. And he laughed, and But in any event, I bring that up because you don't think about it. You really don't. You drive in your car, you're worried about the kids' soccer game, you got this, you got to get shopping, you got to do, and you never think about it. It's one of those things that's easier to say, oh, isn't that interesting, and move on from, than it is to really. And when you go down, and I had an aneurysm, so they had to fix one of my arteries. Okay. And so when you're in that position, and then you're laying in your bed for a week because that's all you can do until you start to heal up, you begin to think about it, and you say, what's wrong with it? Why wouldn't you? And it's almost one of those things is, why wouldn't anybody? What would be the problem with it? If you pass away and they can use some of your organs and you can sustain somebody else's life, once you die, you don't need it anymore. Not going to do you much good.
That's right.
And so, I'm not trying to be, morbid with this, but it's simple. It's what it is.
Yeah.
So let's chat about it, Rob. And I know you and Bob, Bob just had one a year ago. Am I right?
A little over a year and a half.
Yeah, a little over a year. And what did you have?
I had a liver transplant at UMass Memorial.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a scary time.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. How long you had they obviously have to operate, put it in,
right,
and take the old one out.
Yes.
And what's the recuperation on that?
Well, I spent, everyone's different how they recuperate.
Right. Yeah.
My advice to anyone going in for anything like that is get as much exercise as you can, because I didn't. I had 3 hernias going into it, and I didn't do a lot of exercising, so it took me a long time. It took me 2.5 weeks to get out of ICU.
Oh, wow.
And I was in there from Thanksgiving Eve until New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And then even getting home, there was probably another 2 to 3 months at home.
Did you get turkey on Thanksgiving?
Excuse me?
Did you get turkey on Thanksgiving?
No, I wasn't awake until the 28th.
Oh, John.
But even when I got home, it took me 2 to 3 months before I could stand on one leg and pull the sock on, just for balance. And
You say that, and I have to be honest. I'm the eternal optimist. Everything, no matter what happens, look, the sun's shining someplace today. we just got a cloud under ours, and we got some moisture coming. But it's out. The sun comes out every day, and so I'm an optimist. And when I look, they told me about this operation. I said, great, no problem. I'm going to be fine. I thought I'd be up riding a bike in an hour. Well, guess what? You find out that it's 1 to 3 months, as you indicated. It takes the average person 1 to 3 months to completely heal. you know. And I said to my PCP about 2 weeks later, yeah, I can't believe. He says, Dick, do you realize what they did? They went down and cut way down into you to get your artery. They took it out and they replaced a piece of it. And then he put it all back in again. There was 4 surgeons that did the operation. One just opens you up. The other one cuts down to get to where it is. And then the main surgeon was going to do the operation. Because the operation is so tedious. As I said, one mistake and it's over, you know? So it's so tedious that one man can't do it because there's so much, the complexity of it. And so you say, wow. Now, I bounced back and I'm in great shape, don't get me wrong. But I really thought, I'll be out of there in 3 days. You know, not really. You know, it takes a long time to rehab after you've had a situation. Now, Robin, let's talk about you. You have kidney, right?
I had a kidney transplant.
Yep.
I had a kidney transplant in January 8 years ago. So I'm celebrating the gift of life for 8 years now with a new kidney.
Wow, that's great.
And I live life to the fullest every day.
Yeah, yeah,
Every day's a miracle for any of us with transplants.
yep.
You look at life a little differently.
I think, is it on here? I think. Yeah. 125,000 men, women, and children are awaiting life-saving organ transplant. And this is the thing that really, really made me think about, hey, Dick, stop playing with the thing. Sign up, will you? 8,000 people die each year because the organ they need was not donated in time.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot of people to lose when we have 3 times as many as that people who die every day.
Right. And 22 people, Dick, die a day waiting for an organ transplant.
Yeah,
22 people.
yeah. And so it's, you know, and I think that, well, even in my situation, Dr. Klaus said to me, 4 years ago, we didn't do this operation. That's how new it is. The one that they did on me.
Wow.
4 years ago, they didn't do it. Because, and I'll tell you, I mean, what I've seen just at Mass General through this process was, for instance, I went in for a stress test and never left the chair.
Wow.
I sat in a chair for 2 hours. They put in an intravenous needle in with 3 spigots. The first one they put in was nuclear medicine. And in fact, I had to have a card that I carried for 4 days because I'd set off fire alarms if I went anywhere, okay, till it wore out of me.
Yeah.
But they put that in, that goes right into my heart. And what that did, that stimulated me being on a treadmill. All right? Then they put in a blue one, blue color. That stimulated me running up and down stairs. And then the third one they did was red. It took 2 hours for the 3 tests. And they got all these machines running all the time, checking my heart and my pulse before they even operated, to make sure I could get through the operation, is what this was for. And the blue one was in, and that stimulated me jogging around a block. And then they get the results, and they say, okay, he's in great shape, so they could operate. And then after the operation, I went in. I saw the doctor who did the actual operation on the 10th of April. So that was 5 weeks after I was actually operated on. But before I went to see him, I went up to the lab, and they put 11 blood pressure sleeves on me. Wow. One on this arm. I had one on each big toe, one on my ankle, one on my calf, one right above my knee. And she has a remote starter. And she could control that, which one she wanted to go. And she was doing this whole series of tests to make sure that the blood pressure on this position where the operation was the same as my left leg, to make sure it was working properly. And you say, wow. And then she has a little camera, and she ran right down the incision, looking inside to see how the blood was going through the system. So the technology has improved, and that's why we have this opportunity where we can take an organ and move it to another person, and it'll function and save their lives. Yep. That's the beauty of how medicine has improved in this country. And I wish there was a magic wand that I could wave today to everybody who's watching this program, and they'll all run right out, and they will go on to registerme.org.
Yep.
That's all you got to do. Registerme.org, and out of this program, we had 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people who today will make the commitment to be a donor.
It would be wonderful. They could do it at the RMV or do it right there at registerme.org.
You don't want to go to the RA. Try to not go to the. I was at the, when Governor Dukakis was governor, he sent me over to the registry. Used to be on Nashua Street. That building is now gone, and they moved over to the transportation building. But I was at the registry for 4 years, and one of my jobs at the recommendation of His Excellency the Governor was to figure out why it takes so long to get anything done. Someday I'll tell you the story of the registry. All right? So while that's nice, if you got to go anyway, sign up while you're there. But try to avoid the registry if you can. Especially now they got these new licenses, and they got lines out the door, you know, trying to get these new ID licenses.
And it's a very simple process on registerme.org, you know, and then you're registered for life. You don't have to worry renewing it on your license because you're there and it's on there for life.
Now, you know, one of the things I asked this fella, and he said, well, I don't really know the answer to that. What happens? Does anybody really know? Somebody passes away and they're a donor. How does anybody know they're a donor? And how do they know that? How does the board know that the person just passed away?
Each hospital has a registry and an actual list that they can go right into the computer. And when you pass away, your name comes up at that hospital that you're at, and it notifies right away. It says that you're a registered organ donor. So then they can call the New England Organ Bank or anybody, the organ banks wherever they are, and it'll tell the hospital right away that you're listed as an organ donor. So then they can send somebody in.
How long do they actually have to take any organs they need? You know, anybody know?
It's not long.
No.
It's not long. Some organs, maybe a couple of days. Some organs, maybe
Minutes
10 hours.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so then they do they take as many as they want, or are they looking for a specific organ? I mean, when you sign up to be an organ donor, I got a bunch of them.
Right.
Right. Well, what they'll do is they'll take some preliminary tests on it, blood. They do biopsies on them and find out what the
How good
your
they
actual right. And then they go through that registry and find out, does anyone match this blood type, this liver fat? I'll go with mine. My liver fat content, blah blah blah. 100 things, and if they come up, they come up.
Yeah.
And they go, hey, Bob Wood over here needs that one. What do you think?
Yeah.
And
then they call you up and say, get in here quick.
I got a call at 9:30 Thanksgiving Eve and said, we got the perfect match for you. Stop in. And I said, no worries. I was there about 10 o'clock, a little after 10, and I was being wheeled into surgery at 11 o'clock that night.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive.
Wow. That's interesting. So now let's talk about, because I've talked to people about this, and they've asked me, once you've donated the organ, then you go back to the undertaker and go through the normal process of your funeral and so forth. Oh, okay.
Right.
So there's no big thing.
Right. No, it's even if they take into ligaments and things like that, which they do, you were pretty much preserved back to where you were, so you can have
any type of funeral you want.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. So the reason I wanted to mention that is that's a question that, in fact, when I talked to this fellow at MGH, he said, everybody asked me that. And he says, I've never gone through it, so I don't really know. And so I figured, well, today's the day to find out, because you both have had that experience.
And one organ donor, Bob, one person can save up to 75 lives. And being an organ or a tissue donor could save up to 75 different things.
Wow.
If they're all healthy enough, like Bob said, with the testing and everything. But one person, by being an organ donor, could possibly save 75 different things, which is amazing. I mean, and they're adding to that list more and more.
When I hear these things, I kind of scold myself that I didn't do this before. Why did I wait this? Not that I'm still alive, so I can't give them anything anyway. So it doesn't matter when I did it. But I'm just saying to myself, when you hear these things, what's the issue here?
And now also, more and more religions are accepting it. more and more religions are actually stepping up and saying it's okay to be organ donors. All the major religions now are accepting it.
I
and
never
promoting
realized
it.
the religion would say not to.
Yep. There were certain religions back maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago that didn't accept it. And now all the major religions are accepting it. Which is another great thing.
Well, yeah, the
It's
other
really,
thing
really
is-
great.
If you don't tell them, how would they know? You know, I shouldn't say that. But when you think about it, you know, and when you read this little statement, men, women, and children. Children, you're going to save some kid who may be 12 or 13 years old.
Younger than that even.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I'm just using that as an example. You just bought that kid another 50, 60 years.
That's right.
You know, people have asked me, I have no problem saying, I'm going to turn 83 in August. So I've had a great life. You know, I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. Okay? And I smile and tell people, it isn't a case of if, it's when. You know. But the point is, and my doctor, I have to say this, I stay very, very active. I'm involved in all kinds of things. And my doctor keeps telling me that I'm his prime, and he teaches at Harvard Medical School and is at Mass General. And he says, you know, I said, Alan, stop the baloney. How long have I really got? And he laughs. And he says, if you promise me you won't run in front of a big truck, you've got at least another 10 or 12 years.
Beautiful.
As long as you stay
Congratulations, that's
active.
awesome.
You know, and he says, Dick, I got patients 20 years younger than you. It's over. It's over. They sit on the couch all day and watch television. He says, you're on the board of assessors, you do television programs, you're a volunteer, you take care of the altar service at your church, you're busy, you're active. And he said, don't ever stop, you know. And he says, people don't realize how important that is to stay involved and stay active, you know. And so the point is, though, that when you realize that something you no longer need, because that's what it is, it's something you no longer need or have any use for, you can take some little kid and buy him another 50 or 60 years. And the way medical advances are going, people are living a lot longer than ever. You know, people are living, you know, into their look at, you see them, how many times you see someone 94, 95, you know, into their 90s, even people hitting 100, and unheard of 20 years ago, you know, or would be an exception 20 years ago.
There's 5,000 people, Dick, just waiting in New England for transplants. 5,000 people.
When you say, let's talk about that waiting. When you say waiting, I suppose it varies depending on what they need. How much time do they have? How long do you wait?
I waited close to 3 years after being listed. And you can wait. I know people that have waited longer than that. And I know people that have, it depends on how sick you are.
Yeah, I was going to say, at some point,
Yep.
in your case, that liver's going to shut down.
Eventually, yes, it is. It's going to shut down on you. And, you know, I was very fortunate where I got a lot of the symptoms of the bad liver, turning yellow,
Yeah.
yellow in the eyes, no
Yeah.
ambition
Right.
or motivation to do anything. And there's people that are in a hospital, but I was home.
Yeah.
There's people in hospital beds withering away,
Yeah.
waiting for one too, because it's as you had mentioned before, people donating and how much. It's 95% of people think it's a great idea to do this. Only in reality, only 54% are
Correct.
actually signed up.
Oh, my hand is up. I thought it was a great idea. I was so proud of my wife. I didn't sign up.
Yep. And the scariest part of that is only 2 to 3% of those organs that are donated are used. It's like going to a Celtics game and seeing the 18,000 people there. Get them all out of there except for 600. And you got to say to yourself, geez, am I lucky enough to be in that 600? We were.
What do you say? 2% aren't used?
2% are used. And that's because of logistics, condition of things when someone expires.
Yeah.
But that's all. And sometimes it's too far to get it to someplace.
Oh, okay.
This or that.
Yeah, I was going to say, the person who needs it's got to be pretty close.
Within reason, yeah. I mean, my doctor went to South Carolina to get a liver to bring back to UMass in Worcester, but they flew him like that day. He had to cancel my appointment. Said I got to go. Put him on a jet, sent him down. He did the operation down there, brought it back. It didn't match. So that sometimes that happens too. A lot of people don't match. There's so many things that go on with a match.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's rejection gets involved at some point.
Correct.
It's huge.
Yep.
And you can get a transplant, and then your body rejects it.
Another reason why that 2% is the way it is if you die on the side of the road and you're not brought back, you have to be alive to be brought to the hospital in order to be an organ donor. So if you die on the side of the road, you can't be an organ donor if they don't revive you. If you die in your house, they can't unless you're transported to a hospital alive. And that's why that 2%
Really?
is the way it is.
Oh, so
There's a lot of things that go into that.
you actually have to die in the hospital. You can't even die in the ambulance.
Correct.
Why is that?
No clue. I just felt lucky enough to get one.
No, I hear what you're saying, but I'm thinking, gee, you're in an ambulance and you run away to the hospital and you die, and 7 minutes later you're at the door at the hospital, DER. They can't use any of your organs.
Well, I would imagine sometimes in blood flow, oxygen, things like that affect your internal
yeah,
organs.
maybe, yeah.
And even a 7-minute ride to the hospital, it's not going to work.
So that's why it becomes limited.
Correct.
I would believe so. I can't say for certain, but I would think that's one of the reasons.
My mother's father, my grandfather, was sick, and he insisted that he was going to die in his bed at home. And they took him home from the hospital the day before he died, because he did, I'm not going to die in this hospital, And there's that, so there you go. This was back in the 40s or 50s, many, many years ago. But the point I'm making is, so it's intricate. It's not simple.
No, not at all.
I mean, there are restrictions, there are protections, there are, and I didn't even think about that you have to die in the hospital itself, or they can't use any of your organs.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go on. It's a pretty delicate ballet, as
But
you say.
I got to tell you this. If I were on the other side of that score, and somebody died in the ambulance or died at home and they took them to the hospital, and I'm waiting for that donor, and they said, oh, can't use it because the guy died at home. What? Do it anyway.
Yeah.
But, and I'm sure, I'm going to find out, because I'm going to be at Mass General for a week with this operation, so I'll have access to all kinds of knowledgeable people. So I'm going to find out why. There's got to be a medical reason why that.
I'm sure a lot of it is what you said.
That's just a good conjecture on my
Right.
part. That's
Well,
all.
and then it may even be time. They need to know exactly how long you've been passed away. You know what I'm saying? And there may be a time frame. It may be because if someone dies at home, by the time they might actually do anything, get them to the hospital, it could be 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, but I'm going to find out.
Okay.
There's also no age limit anymore. So people out there, don't say you're too old to sign up. There's no age limit anymore at all to be a registered organ donor. They used to have a restriction of around 60 years old,
Ah, see
and now
that?
there's no age limit at all. Because there's so many different things now. 75 different things is what we said,
Yeah.
There's all those things on our poster we
Well,
posted.
there's eyes. I mean, people can use eyes.
Yep.
The corneas and things
Yeah.
like that. And plus, a lot of people are taking better care of themselves also. So you're healthy past 50, 60 years old, like yourself. It's, and that's a good thing.
Oh, well, there's no question. I mean, I say this, that I worry about me, and I think the one thing people have asked me, Dick, you're in great. How do you? I started going to this doctor in 1984. Dr. Alan Gorel, who's a PCP at Mass General. He's an internist. He's a consultant to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. He's testified before Congress 3 different times on health care. And he teaches at Harvard Medical School. In fact, he loves me to come in for my physical. I go twice a year. And he loves me to come because he has the students he brings over, and some patients won't, but I let the kids do my physical, and they do twice as much as he does. But like he laughs, he says, "But Dick, I can look in your eye and find out more than that poor kid can find out, checking everything about you." You know, he
Very
says,
true.
"When you've been around a long time, you know the shortcuts." You know, he laughs, but he does. He grills the kids. You know, he makes them. You know, and that's how he uses that to teach the kids. But I've been going to him since 1984, and the bottom line is, I do what he tells me to do. I used to love cheese, pizza. I still love it. He says, "It's killing you. Get off cheese." He said, "It's nothing but milk and salt. That's all cheese is." And he says, "You know, everything in moderation. You want a little piece of cheese, go ahead, but don't get a pizza 4 times a week with double cheese on it." You know, you're going to kill yourself. And so that was that story, you know. And I used to love to go out to get a big piece of roast beef, you know, and have a 2 or 3. Dick, once a while, every couple of weeks, you know, stop. You're killing yourself, you know. And so you do what you're told. If you do what you're told, you know, you'll be okay. Problem is, most people don't like to be told.
That's it right there. That's right.
You know? But he does, and I've changed my diet. I'm very conscious, you know, of things, and I take the medication that he tells me to take when he tells me to take it, you know. So I do that. But this is an important thing, and the best thing for people to do is just get a hold of registerme.org.
Correct.
That's all they have to do.
You just pick up that computer, that laptop, your iPhone, whatever it is, and it's a very simple procedure.
Yeah.
And also, if you don't want to donate, say your eyes as an example, you can choose on that when you sign up what you don't want to donate, which is great too, because some people have a belief they don't want this
Yeah.
donated, they don't want that. You can choose right on that site.
Wow. Do you know how many people are registered?
It's just around 54% of the United States of
Really?
anyone that has a license.
Wow.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot. We need more. We call them
Well,
heroes.
when I read this, that 8,000 people die each year because the organs they needed were not donated in time. When you think about that, I mean, saving because you donated something you no longer needed, was no use to you at all. One of those 8,000 people survived. What about that's troubling?
Yes, there is trouble. Well, that's why we were doing, Robin and I and 1,000 other people just in this area are trying to raise the awareness of it. Because if we can get that 54% up, that'll raise that 2 or 3% up. And that's thousands and thousands of lives a year just by
I
raising
mean,
the
just stop and think.
donations.
If you can get that 54% up to 60%, what you've done, the hundreds of lives that will continue because of it.
Right, exactly.
That's why we go out and we promote organ donation tables. We promote organ donation through health fairs. There's
Yeah,
many
well,
different ways that we
this
can
was
do
at-
it.
This was at Mass General.
Yeah, and you just get handed a card.
Yeah, they just walked around and were chatting with you, and then they had a table, you know, and they were a couple of young volunteers. They were young people. They weren't, you know, they were probably in their 20s or 30s, and I chatted with them briefly and they gave me the card, and I did it because I knew you and I had been corresponding about doing the program, so I said, a chance to find out something. So I went over to the table, and then and he looked at me and says, "Are you a donor?" And I went, "No," and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." "Why not?" I said, my wife is. "No," he says, "I asked about you." You know, and I laughed and I said, "You know what?" And he handed me the card, you know, and I said, let me do this. I said, I got a program coming up, and I explained to him what I was doing, and he was all very excited about that. Well, we're running out of time, but I want to thank Bob, you, and glad you're here, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And Robin, it's always great to see you. And Robin and I did radio programs for many years, and so I'm delighted that she came over today and brought her friend Bob Wood with her. And
Thank you very much for
and
having
there's-
us again.
By the way, 2 survivors, folks. There it is. Ball's in your court. That's another Conversations with. Thanks for watching.